Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. We have two gentlemen in the studio today who are making New Haven tick by doing a great public service, which is to make sure that voters will have choices on Election Day. Say hello to Nyrell Moore and Johnnie McFadden. They're running against incumbents for state legislative seats in New Haven and neighboring West Haven in November. We're going to find out who they are, why they're running. Hello, gentlemen, and thanks for coming on the air today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And thank you for having me as well.
So one of you is running as a Republican, and one of you is running as an independent. Nyrell, you have the Republican endorsement to run for the State Senate 10th District, which is a lot of New Haven, everywhere from New Hallville to I think even parts of the Hill.
Yes.
As well as West Haven.
Yes.
So why are you, is your second campaign? I think you told me you ran for city council as a Republican in West Haven.
Yes, I ran for city council, District 3 in West Haven. But now my main goal has actually been try to impact the country. So that's what I wanted to do. So that's why I am running for Senate 10.
So you're trying to impact the country by running for local office.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I see what's going on within the country, specifically economically and educationally with the younger generation. And I do want to be somebody who can help them and steer them into the right path. Just seeing what we've gotten in our demographic as a black man for the last 60, 70 years. We've never really gotten anything that can actually substantially benefit us for the future. And we are in that future now. And the promises that they gave us back in the 60s and 70s are not coming to fruition. So we need to make a change, and we need to step up now. And I think as a young 27-year-old, I can be somebody who can help have that shift and change the next generation into a future, into insight that they can actually thrive on.
Johnnie McFadden, you're an independent.
I am.
You're running in the 95th State Representative District, represented by Juan Candelaria. That also includes, I believe, parts of the Hill, Fairhaven neighborhood. What made you want to run for office? And is this your first race?
It is. Well, quite frankly, I'm tired of business as usual. We have career politicians who've been in office for 20, 30 years, don't do anything, are not delivering.
You're going short, some are 40, 50.
Right. Very absent from the district, very casual, take the vote for granted. And as elected officials, we have a responsibility, to make life better for people. That's what they don't do. And it's time for people to step up and step out.
And so you feel, are you running, I don't want to put words in your mouth, because you feel that's a way to step up if you want things to change?
I feel like we have to do something different if we want something different. And for the longest of time, people have not had choices. A lot of these folks been in office, not because they're so great, but because they've been unopposed. And, once people get into these positions, they stay for so long, they become laxated. And our concerns are not important to them. They are very out of touch with reality, with everyday struggling families. They seem to don't care. And so I'm very passionate about, changing things for the better, wanting things. You hear people complaining about taxes and this and that, but nobody does anything. So why keep complaining? We can just change it.
Thank you. And so you're both running for state office, which often, even though it's a lot of power there, right? A lot of stuff gets decided by the state in Connecticut. People don't pay a lot of attention to the state. Why that office? What is it specifically about being a state legislator that made you decide to seek this office rather than alder or mayor or city council, or Congress or judge? Like, why do you want? I guess we don't run for judge here. Why did you want to be a state legislator?
So my main thing, and again, I know things do start locally. And I see what's going on politically. Like you said, there's been a lot of people who've just been in office that haven't done anything for years on years. They're just incumbent members that don't really have an outreach, or they don't really connect to the people in the community that they're representing. And for that reason, we've seen these declines. And I do care about my people in my city, but I don't care about little things like potholes. I care about the educational system. I care about how, just in terms of just Connecticut, we are one of the worst districts within the state. Why is that the case? It's because people up in Hartford are not paying attention to what's going on the forefront. They're just more telling us things and just going with the flow and going on with whatever they're actually trying to initiate in Hartford for the grand scheme of things. So they're leaving people in New Haven and West Haven basically with these wishes and these dreams, but not bringing them to fruition.
Well, in what ways, for instance, as a state senator, could you affect education? What would you want to do as a state legislator to improve the school system?
Well, I would want to get into the school programs and make sure that we could develop some sort of mental health programs for the youth. I think that will go a long way into their educational system, because they need to understand where they are and how they can develop for their future. I think mental health is very, very important. And I just came from Morrow Sheridan today, and the kids, the 8th graders, the National Junior Honor Society in that school, they're actually setting up a mental health program called Harmony's Haven. And essentially, that's a safe space for any of the kids to go to. And I believe if we get more of those programs in the schools, I think that the educational system can improve and go a long way, because these kids are now in school with more structure and more mental stability. And I think mental stability goes a long way within our community, and which is something that we haven't had for a long time.
And Johnnie McFadden, what about state legislative role was interesting to you as opposed to a different office?
Because have you been watching the news? Did you see what they're doing down in D.C. right now with Congress? This is the most unproductive Congress in the history of Congress.
Yes.
And these folks come from all over the country and go to D.C. to do what? Nothing. And, it's not helping us. So if you really want to make change, in my opinion, it starts locally. Mm-hmm. And then you can kind of work your way up if you choose to. But to start locally, you are able to work with the people right here in your own community, your own district. And that's what my thing is. It's nice to be in Congress. I will get there one day. But right now, I'm focused on the people of my district and to make change.
All right. We're talking to Nyrell Moore and Johnnie McFadden. They're running for state legislative office against incumbents, which is a bold move and a needed move in our city on election years. So we're here to find out who they are and what they're about. Nyrell, you're running as a Republican. Johnnie is an independent. So why are you running as a Republican?
It's a good question. A lot of people actually asked me that within the last few years. My whole thing is understanding history. And we don't really understand history, so we don't understand our direction. And for me, thinking about just where we come from, just as African American, although I do claim myself to be American, I believe that we don't look at the two-party system the way we should. And the Republican Party was actually was founded with some African American members, which a lot of people in our demographic, they don't understand. So the Republican Party, they were initiating things like Black Wall Street back in the late 1890s, et cetera. But then you have the Democratic Party. They established themselves, and then they created things like the KKK, which went into our towns and started destroying our towns. And they told us if they're not going to, if they want us to stop this initially, we have to vote Democrat at that point in time. Which then that's what we started doing, but they never changed what they were doing to us. They just changed how they were doing it to us: Jim Crow, segregation, etc. So seeing that pattern and seeing what they've been giving us for the last hundreds of years, I think that we need a shift. And I know that people, Donald Trump isn't everybody's favorite cup of tea, but I do see him as a change. He's somebody who's different. He doesn't seem as a politician. He more runs the country as a businessman. And just for America specifically, I think that we need to have more business-like mentalities if we're going to control our nation and make the nation better for our people. So that's what got me into really going into the Republican Party.
And what about in terms of basic programmatic issues, whether we're talking about immigration, healthcare, taxes, approaches to education, charter schools? Where do you fall on a continuum? Do you see yourself comfortable being a Republican? Do you think it stands for any sets of values in addition to business-run government?
Absolutely. And I think that one of the main discrepancies that we have, we tend to think that Republicans are this racist group of people. And when you look at things and just my personal interactions with people, it seems that the Republicans are actually the most loving of people. It seems like and I'm not sure talking about everybody, so don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying Democrats are not loving either, but when you come out with a different opinion, it tends 9 times out of 10, the Republican person will actually listen to you more than a Democratic person would, especially if you're not aligning with how they feel about certain things. And that's another thing that we need to get past. We need to get back to common sense a lot of the times. Everybody's feelings, yes, you may feel a certain way, but everything cannot be validated if we're going to be adults and control the next generation so they can know what is right and from wrong. And I think that's another thing that we need to get back into. But when it comes to things like immigration, I'm American first. So we're all Americans here. If you're born in America, I think that we should establish policies and establish regulations that fit the American person. Now, everybody can come into the country legally, but I think we should come into the country legally, and we can't no longer just go off the Constitution, because the Constitution was actually designed for at most 1 million people at that time. Now,
and what about abortion, for instance? Republicans tend to be for restrictions on abortion, and Democrats for fewer restrictions on abortion. Do you have a feeling there?
So abortion. I am pro-choice in a sense. I know that there are certain cases like rape, for example. Yes, you should be allowed to have an abortion, specifically if you were forced into that situation. However, I think that we need to teach more accountability within our youth, because abortion is now used as birth control, and we don't need to use abortion as birth control. We need to use abortion for important matters, because we shouldn't just go out and just kill everybody or
so
kill
are you
these.
okay with like 6-week bans, 3-month ban? Any of the bans that have been proposed? Or?
I'm okay with abortion as long as the circumstance presents itself. If you're just going out and just freely having intercourse with anybody, I would say you shouldn't be allowed to have an abortion, just because that's your personal choice. Now you have to be accountable for your actions. Whereas things like rape, incest, etc., I do believe that you should be able to get an abortion for stuff like that. So there's a pendulum of things. But it seems to me that the people that are fighting for these abortion rights use the victims to their advantage, when them themselves just need to be held more accountable for their own actions. And I think that starts with the youth.
All right. So, Johnnie McFadden, you're running as an independent. You're not running as a Democrat. You're not running as a Republican. What was your choice to run that way, and where do you stand in these philosophical debates?
When I registered my campaign back in January, I registered as a Democrat. I've been a Democrat my entire adult life. But when I became a candidate and I kind of seen what the party was all about, and I seen the rhetoric, when I seen the level of corruption, it's just egregious. The level of corruption that I've seen, even with the Democrats. And I was told by a certain city leader that if I don't go along with the Democrat policies, and if I don't align myself with them across the board, I'm considered unloyal, and that they can't support me. So I made up my mind at that time, well, you know what? If that's the way y'all roll, I'm good, because I'm not broke. I'm not paid for it. I don't work for corporate donors. I work for the everyday people. So if I'm going to vote, it's going to be an alliance to what the people want and need, not what these other folks who've been here for 30 years want. And I decided at that time that, you know what, I don't want anything to do with this, so I'm going to go as independent. And I've gotten much more open doors since I've done that.
And where do you stand sort of nationally on some of these issues we were just talking about with Nyrell?
I don't. So to be honest, I have not focused too much on those particular issues. They are important, of course, but I'm focused more on the local stuff that's affecting people around me, where I can really make a change. And what people don't know is Connecticut, as small as it is has the third highest taxes in the country. The affordable housing crisis is beyond me. Connecticut is the third state with the most housing crisis issues. And, you know, there's people who are just trying to make it, people who just want help, people who just need an answer to their everyday basic needs. And I think that those issues have not been tackled. I mean, I support abortion when it's necessary. It's not my decision. And in fact, about 8% of Americans have trust in their government. So most people don't trust the government at all. And I think some of these issues are the reason why they don't trust government. I think that if you want to make a certain decision, that's between you and God. It's not my decision to tell you what and what not to do. We can give you the tools, but it's up to you at the end of the day. We all have free choice. We can't force our will on other people. And that's sometimes what they do. So I just stand back and support where I can support. And sometimes I just remain silent because, you know.
You mentioned affordable housing. Everyone's concerned about that issue. What can you do as a state legislator specifically, if you're elected, to create more affordable housing?
Well, so there is a program right now that's building up housing, and what they say is it's like Project 2036 or 35 or something like that. What they're saying is by 2035 there'll be enough housing, affordable housing, for all of us. Here's my issue with that. When you look around, there's properties being built everywhere you look, but the properties that's being built are not low income. They are for the elite. And so we need to have developers and come up with a plan that we can, provide adequate housing. There's a lot of space in New Haven that's unused. There's a lot of choices that we have, but because it doesn't work with their political agenda, they don't do it. They just leave it the way that it is. And housing is a big issue for a lot of people, but you don't hear folks talking about that.
Is there anything you could do specifically as a legislator?
Well,
one issue they talk about is zoning. They might want to not let towns have the 1 acre, like 1 acre zoning where you can't have multifamilies in certain places, or where you can't have ADUs, where you can build a mother-in-law apartment on. Anything you'd like to see change?
I think that's a start in the right direction. But the other issue, I don't think that it passed. They was trying to do something where they put a cap on rent because the price of rent is through the roof. And then you have these landlords in these apartment complexes, and every year the rent go up and up and up.
So you'd in favor of rent caps?
I am.
How much you can raise the rent? Right. And how about there was a bill that didn't make it this year where you have just cause evictions. You can't just evict someone when the lease is up. You have to have a good reason, or else you have to keep them as the tenant.
Right. I mean, I definitely support that. But also, you also want to support landlords because you have certain people who will come into your property. They won't leave. They trash it. They don't do the right thing. So you want to give landlords options as well, as long as it's legal and legit. There's a concern because we don't want folks to be in our properties in our neighborhoods who don't belong there, who are causing havoc on the neighborhood. And so we want to be mindful that we serve the people, but we also protect the landlords.
Well, and that's one thing I actually want to piggyback on. I see that a lot of people just in New Haven, speaking to them, there's not a lot of homeowners inside of New Haven themselves. There's a lot of rented spaces or rental dwellings. And I truly believe that's because of the environment and the safety of New Haven. New Haven's safety has been on a decline for a very long time. And as you can see crime rates are going up substantially. Just things like the Kia Boys is a perfect example. Homeowners don't want to live in New Haven because of the fact that there's so much crime going on. They don't want to raise their families in New Haven. So we need to get our protection back to where it was years ago, so homeowners can now feel safe in their community. Because them not feeling safe in their community means that they'll rent out their dwelling, but they'll live somewhere like Cheshire. They'll live somewhere like Greenwich, knowing that they can live in a safer environment and still reap the benefits of having that home in that area. So I do think we need to bring back homeowners, but we also need to clean up the city a little bit before we do that.
And what would you do as a state legislator to make that happen?
I would give more power back to the police officers.
In what way specifically?
Well, I know that police officers are definitely needed. As an American and as a black man, I know that we need to understand that the mental health of, like I mentioned before, the mental health of the state or the country is not where it needs to be. So we do need patrol. We do need people who can actually keep things at bay. If we don't have that, then there's going to be chaos all over the place. And our demographics, you can see when we have places like New Haven, places like Chicago, these places are targeted essentially with destruction. And that starts at a government level, but that also starts locally. And we need to combat a lot of that. But in turn of combating a lot of that, we need to look at the bigger picture of it all. And we need to get back into these kids' mentalities and understand what they can, show them what they can be for the future, so we can then clean up the city. It starts off generationally. It starts off with my kids and my grandkids and teaching them the right way to go about things so they can clean up their community for their kids and their grandkids and so forth and so forth. And I think that's what we really need to do. We need to bring back the protection and give back the safeties that our ancestors were accustomed to.
So what can the legislature do specifically to accomplish that with police officers, giving power to police officers?
Well, I think defunding the police was a huge step in the wrong direction. I think we need to get more funding back in the police's hands. And we also need to vet more of the police as well. We need to make sure that we put the right officers in power. Everybody just can't be a police officer because everybody doesn't have the mental state to be a police officer. But if we can get the right police officers and the right individuals in office and in power, in order to instill the right morality onto the children into America, I think that will go a long way.
So you're running against Gary Winfield, who did lead the effort to have more monitoring of statistics about police stops and repercussions to be able to sue police officers. Was he right? Was he wrong in those goals?
So I do see where we need to monitor more police officers. And again, everybody's not good. Whether you have a badge or not doesn't change the person that you are. But we need to vet those people before we give them those badges. And I think that would tie into a lot of the police brutality that we see across the country, because I don't think is as prevalent as they try to make it, but they're trying to divide us racially. And when you get black people in the war, in America specifically, that are ignorant to what's truly going on in society, and you give them snippets of this police officer doing this bad thing, this police officer doing this bad thing, they tend to think everybody's doing that, which is not the case. So we need to get back to understanding what we truly are, get people to understand that there are still good police officers in the world. There's still good people in the world in general. And we need to combat a lot of the stuff that I feel that the government is trying to instill in us to divide us.
We're talking to Nyrell Moore, Republican candidate for the 10th State Senate District seat, and Johnnie McFadden, an independent candidate for the 95th State Representative seat. I want to ask you, gentlemen, about who you are, how you grew up, what you do for a living, how you came to be running for office. Why don't we start with you, Johnnie? Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up here in New Haven.
Where?
In the city I grew up actually in Fairhaven, where I spent most of my teenage years, growing up in the city. What I will say is, growing up in the city, I was not perfect. I have made some bad choices in my teenage and early adult years, as we all have. My past is an open book, is well documented. But I grew up here in New Haven, been here and, just working in the last few years as an advocate, speaking for people. I do a lot of youth work with our young people, try to give them a chance, because I think in politics, our kids are always left out. We always focus on everything else except our young people. So I do have a heart for the young people. And so I do work extensively with the young people in the community. And
do you have a job doing youth work? So
Turnbridge, that's right behind here. I was with them for quite a while. I'm not with them anymore, but that was my last employer. I did quite a bit of work with them. But now I'm full-time working on the campaign. Mm-hmm. And really.
What did you do at Turnbridge?
So Turnbridge is a drug and alcohol counselor for minors. So I was a support staff that worked with their young people over there in their recovery efforts. And so.
That's tough stuff.
It is tough.
What do you learn from that in terms of taking lessons for being a legislator or just an adult in the community, from what people have to overcome and what people want to help them have to do with addiction?
Well, first, I think you have to have a heart for the people, because a lot of folks, they don't have a heart for this. They don't understand it. They don't have the patience for it. They don't, it's all about them. I think so. If you want to be successful, you really have to want to do it. You have to want to do it for the right reasons. I think that if you want real change, it may not come in one day, but you stay at it, and eventually you will see change. So I would tell anyone who wants to do this, just make sure you're doing it for the right reason.
Did you struggle with any of those issues when you were younger?
I did not. But they say that the best drug and alcohol counselors are those who were addicted to it. But I pushed back just a little bit on that, because
I always wondered about that too, because there's often relapse too. I mean, everybody's different, right?
Right. Also, I was never addicted to drugs and alcohol, but I have had addictions. So addiction is addiction, whether you're addicted to drugs, alcohol, food, sex, whatever it is. Addiction is addiction.
You talked about losing a lot of weight.
I did. I was about 300 pounds. And now I'm like 190. And it was a tough journey. Had a lot of up and downs, but here I am.
What was the most important thing you had to do to change the way you thought about food and eating?
I had to look at where I am and where I want to go. And where you want to go, you need to do some things before you get there. And most people want this quick fix. It don't work like that. You have to do the work. You have to apply yourself. You have to be dedicated and committed. And when you don't see instant results, don't stop. Keep going. Because a lot of us, if we don't see instant results, we want to stop. This ain't working. Just like elections, you vote one time, the person you want don't win. I'm not voting no more.
That's what I was going to say. Do you see a parallel between what you described and how you're approaching politics, coming in as an outsider, taking on established people?
Right. It can be tough. But if you know what you want to see and you know what you want to do, you have to keep that in the forefront of your mind and not get distracted with the political chaos that's going on. It's a distraction. with the chaos and the rhetoric around you. And while these politicians are arguing and fighting, the people are suffering and dying. And you've been here for 30 years. So my thing is, even they need to change their focus.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's one thing to be in office, but if you're not doing anything, why are you here?
And then Nyrell Moore, tell me about, you told me earlier you grew up in New Haven in the Hill and in West Haven.
So I'm actually a West Haven native. However, my grandmother, rest in peace to my grandmother, she grew up in New Haven. My whole family grew up in New Haven. She lived on Hollock Street, so that's where Roberto Clemente is, right where the police station is on that corner. What got me into politics, again, just understanding the climate of the country and understanding.
You don't mean John C. Daniels School, do you?
No, Roberto Clemente.
Okay.
Roberto Clemente,
That's
right?
was up from the police station. Okay, never mind.
No, it's right next to Sandra's
Okay, yeah.
generation. So just looking at the climate of the country, just understanding the history of the country, the true history, not the history that they just distort in our textbooks in school. Understanding things like the Republican Party and where we first started as African Americans in the United States. Understanding how the Democratic Party has given us certain things just throughout history that never really benefited us. It more just caught up to our emotions or our feelings at that point in time. Looking at just how local politicians, how they have been in office for 30, 40 years. But unfortunately, it seems like nothing's changing and everything's getting a little worse. Understanding that stuff and also understanding my true connection to God, the Most High. I'm not a religious person. I do believe religion is a very divisive thing that has divided us as a human species. However, I do believe in the Most High, Yeshua, Yahweh. That's what I like to call him. And I do believe that we're about to get back to that. And we are in a critical point in time in human history. If you look at society and you truly understand history and its nature. And I think that right now we need to step up to the plate. And there's just adults, it's people older than me that they're just oblivious to either what's going on or they just don't really care or that they're a part of the situation. And we as my generation and just people who are loving and caring for the world around them, we need to see what's going on and really discern, really pick people who are going to be for us. Because right now it is a crucial time in human history. Mm-hmm. If we don't start to pick the people that are for us, we may not have a country or we may not have a world to live in. And we can see it just in terms of the wars that are picking up. How we've been forced to do certain things within the last few years that everybody may not have been more accustomed to wanting to do. So things like that has gradually gotten me to this point where I wanted to be a politician. I think for myself and I have my own thought process and just seeing people around me just constantly think the exact same way, but not seeing any results or constantly thinking the exact same way, but not seeing anything that can benefit them in the long run. I see that as very detrimental to us as a people and as a whole. And I want to be a part of that change, that shift that gets us into the right direction. Let's start thinking how we're supposed to be thinking and let's forget all of the stuff that we've been programmed to think. Because the program is no longer working and we need to go outside that program or it's just not, we're not going to have a real world to live in just as spirits on this planet.
You listen to Dateline New Haven. We're talking to Nyrell Moore, Johnnie McFadden, two candidates taking on Democratic incumbents this November. Let me ask you quickly about a few specific issues that you vote on in Hartford. One proposal that didn't make it past the goalpost will probably come up again is to set up a strike fund for workers that once you've been on strike for 2 weeks, you would get the equivalent of unemployment compensation. Do you guys agree with that, Bill?
I'm in full support of it. Because these workers, some of these workers are fighting for some real change and some much needed improvements. And, striking is never easy, I can imagine. I don't think people do that willingly. I think it's a tough choice to decide if you really want to go on a strike. And then when you do, you don't know how long it's going to last. And so you need to have some type of security because if you don't have that, what it does is it kind of defeats the purpose because it forces you back into work even if there is no change. So if you go on the strike for whatever reason and you are unsuccessful, you're now forced to go back into the same environment that you left to strike against. And so I think that if these folks have some kind of support, it will help their cause and it will allow them to stay out of work longer until they get what they're really looking for.
Generally, Republicans were against the bill. I said it's too much money. You shouldn't pay people not to work. Some Democrats opposed it too, including Ned Lamont. The governor said it was too costly and they didn't like the process. But a lot of Democrats are for it, saying that that people need the strength to be able to strike and challenge their employers and the support from the people. Where do you stand on that one?
Well, I just think that the seriousness of the situation matters, because, like you said, I don't believe that people should just be off of work and just having a strike and they just decide to get paid to just strike for whatever reasons that they feel. If it's not a legitimate reason and it's not something that's going to really have any basis or backing on it, I don't think that we should be paying people just to stay at home, essentially. Now, if this is a legitimate action, if we were looking at it and this needs to be changed, people are really being affected by something like that, then I do understand that we should be able to get those people the money that they need.
How would you decide this is a strike we could support, this is a strike we can't?
I would definitely talk to the people, understand where their mentalities are, because, again, we can't validate everybody's feelings. Although you can say, yes, you can feel that way, and that's up to you and God. Your feelings are validated within you. Everybody does not have to feel the same way. And for us to have to pay taxpayer money, or for us to have to take our individual money that we pay on taxes on and apply that to labor workers that are striking for something that may not be as substantial, I don't see the point in doing something like that. But I do support giving somebody some sort of compensation if they are striking for a reasonable cause. I think that's one of the things that we need to get past the accountability thing, which I was saying earlier. We need to teach more accountability in our actions. So that's something that can strengthen the accountability. What are you striking for? Is this something that truly needs to be needs a strike for, or is this something that we can try to bypass with a conversation? If this is something that we can't get past a conversation with, then you absolutely need to make your stance heard in order for the policies and the regulations to get instilled that you want. Then I'm 100% for it. But again, for me, it just is all about the seriousness of the matter itself.
And then another issue that you'll probably be voting on if you win is volatility caps, fiscal volatility caps. What that means is 2017, then renewed in 2013, there was a bipartisan compromise that said the people who pay the most in taxes and pay quarterly, like people in the financial industry, a lot of our money comes from them, and it swings wildly year to year because it's based on investments. So they said that over that tax money, you can only spend up to a certain amount. And then everything beyond that can only go toward paying down debt or rainy day fund for a rainy day, like emergencies, because otherwise they don't want our finances. So that has helped settle our finances. Some people argue that we're bringing in a lot more money than we expected from that. So we've succeeded in paying down debt, although there's a lot of debt left. And we've actually put so much money in rainy day, we're not allowed to put any more. They're saying we should be able to tweak the rules of volatility cap so that we can spend more money for affordable housing or other needs. And other people say it's important to keep that volatility cap because you need that fiscal discipline. That's actually a pretty hot raging debate right now at the legislature. And it's fine if you don't have opinion. You don't have to opinion on every issue, I throw at you. But do you guys have any thoughts on that?
When you have issues like this on the table, the people that's saying we don't want no change, you have to look at the people that's saying this. The people, most folks who don't want things to change are people that benefit from it. And people who want change are not benefiting from what it is. So I think when you're dealing with this, there's a budget. And I think it shouldn't be the same every cycle or every, session. I think that it should be revisited every so often to see what changes have been made, where's the budget now, and make adjustments, either up or down. But it shouldn't be just one way across the board. I think that, when you're doing your budget, you should look into it, look at the numbers, look at the data, see what's going on, and make an appropriate decision.
So you'd be open for revisiting the volatility cap?
I would.
How about you, Nyrell?
Yes, I do believe that we should be able to revisit that because, like he mentioned, everything, it just has to be looked at differently. You get one project one year, you get another project a different year, but the entirety of it and that what you put into that and throughout that year could be entirely different from the year prior. So I think that revisiting everything is probably a great step. I'm not too fond of this conversation, but I do think that if we did try to structure it yearly or try to structure it periodically to try to fit what's going on in the now, I think that would go a long way.
And in terms of some of the climate change proposals, would you have incentives to people to buy electric vehicles? Would you have more charging stations built with state money? Would you have more electric buses, or do you feel that should all be private sector?
Me, I am more of a hybrid type kind of guy. I don't believe that we should get rid of gas vehicles or gasoline vehicles entirely, because I see that there could be something down the road that may be detrimental if we did do all EVs. So yeah, I don't believe in all EV electric vehicles. No.
Any thoughts on you?
I certainly stand with him on that. You don't want to completely get rid of that, because if you do, things happen in the future. Now what? So I think there should be a balance. The best of both. But to just completely disregard one or toss away one for the other, no.
Okay, now you're both running against incumbents. Tell me specifically about the people you're running against and what you would do specifically different if you have any. You don't have. It's okay if you don't have a thought about that, but tell me something about the people you're running against and what makes you see yourself as different besides the fact they've been in a long time.
I'll let you start.
I don't want to get too in depth. I don't want to really go too much at my opponent essentially. No, I'm not really here for that. That's not why I'm here. That's not my goal. My goal is for the betterment of the country and the betterment of my people first and foremost.
So you're not running to critique your opponent. You're just talking about what you can offer.
Yeah, I'm not running to critique my opponent. It's more about the party itself. The Democratic Party has been using us as black people for their benefit for a very, very long time. And unfortunately, he is an African American man. That is part of the Democratic Party. So we come from the same demographic, but we may not align with the same ideals, which is completely okay. But I think that those ideals have been destroying our country in a sense. And I want to be here in that person to try to help combat a lot of that stuff so we can get back to where we need to be morally. So just again, I don't really have much to say about him. I don't want to say much about him because he's his own person. He comes from his own background, and I'm my own person, have my own perspective on things. But the perspective of the country is the main thing.
Isn't about negative about your opponent. It's about talking about yourself, what you're for.
My campaign is about getting the country back to where it needs to be. Making America great again is the most important thing, and it starts individually and locally. Now, if his party doesn't allow him to do that, then he needs to understand that his party may not be the best for his people. But again, I don't have much to say about him as an individual because that's not why I'm here. I'm here to make the country the best it could possibly be.
And what about you, Johnnie?
Well, I will say this. I will only speak on Juan Canalera because you asked. I don't make it a habit of speaking about him, but if you ask, I will tell you. We live in a district where it's about 23,000 people, and our district is divided. We have Fairhaven, Hispanics, the Hill, mainly blacks.
A lot of Hispanics in the Hill too.
It is, but it's really more so in Fairhaven. Yeah, at least that's where all the funding seems to go.
No, they're more fair. Yeah.
So he's been in office for 22 years, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have anything negative to say about him. I never met him. But you look at these people's records, you look at how they vote, you look at what they've done for 22, 30 years since they've been there, there's a huge problem. This last session alone, there's been bills and, suggestions for a lot of money to go into Fairhaven, specifically Fairhaven. Now, Fairhaven is not the entire district. We have the whole district, but this guy seems to only fight for Fairhaven people because he's Hispanic. What I will also say is when I first decided to run for office, I met with the Democratic chair. And he said some things to me that he probably wish he would take back because he didn't think I was serious about running. And the things that he shared with me were very problematic about our current leadership. And he's very absent from the district. When you reach out for any kind of assistance, any kind of questions, absent, no response. They don't do town halls. They don't connect with the voters. You don't see them. And my thing is, how are you asking somebody to vote for you, but you can't even return the email?
Yeah.
You're asking people to vote for you, but when people vote for you and then they call on you, you absent. I don't get it. And I mean, the laundry list goes on and on and on. But my thing is, you have to support people who vote for you and those who don't. And a lot of people in the Hill, from what I hear, don't vote for him, so he don't choose to do business in that particular area, which is horrible because if you have a district that you're responsible for, you have a responsibility to the people of that district, not just the ones that voted for you, but to everybody in the district. And so there's a lot that can be done to improve the district. I've been out doing stuff, talking to people, and not for nothing, when I talk to a lot of people about our current representation, the question is, who is that?
Yeah.
They don't even know who he is. And it's like, how are you a state representative and for 22 years? And most people have no idea who you even are.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem that we have in our demographic, because we tend to vote for people that we don't know, and we don't try to get to know them at all. And so Gary, for example, and just being in my district, I've met a lot of people within my district that have never met Gary, but they just know he's who he is, because it seems like once they get a black man, they put a smile on his face, and then they put him in the public, and it seems like now everybody gets to see his face, see his skin, tie his name to it. Now they know who he is, but they don't truly know who he is. And I think that's what we need to start. We need to start thinking about that stuff. We need to stop letting them give us these, I would say, these African Americans that don't really serve us any purpose, but give us a smile and give us something that looks like us. And I think that's another reason why I'm in the Republican Party, because I see how a lot of the people in the party align. And with me being a person of God, I would love to see the country get back to that. And just the other side, it doesn't really seem like they're doing that too much, but I don't want to go too far.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for joining us on Dateline New Haven. Any final thoughts about voting for you? Oh, that's right. Harry Joseph wants you to ask about Joe Biden saying that you ain't black if you don't vote for him.
Well, I didn't vote for him, so I guess I'm not black.
Who are you voting for this fall?
I'm voting for Donald Trump.
How about you?
I would be voting for Joe Biden, of course. But I will encourage the people to vote. Please come out and vote. Even if you don't vote for me, come vote for somebody. Voting is very important, so please come out and vote in November.
All right. Well, I really enjoyed meeting both of you. Thanks
Thank
so much
you.
for
Thank
coming
you.
in. Thanks to Harry Drost for working the controls. Nyrell Moore, running for the Republican candidate for the State Senate 10th District. Johnnie McFadden, independent candidate, 95th State Representative District. You will find their names on the ballot in November, and you have a choice. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.